That's a tornado. Man.
It's February 5th, 2008. Across America, millions of voters are heading to the polls for Super Tuesday, the biggest day in the presidential primary season. But in the skies over the American South, something far more violent than politics is brewing. 6 days earlier, meteorologists at the Storm Prediction Center began tracking what would become a textbook tornado outbreak. By the morning of February 5th, they issued a high-risk warning, the first for February since 1998, with Memphis, Tennessee at the bullseye. The atmospheric conditions were exceptional. Energy levels in the atmosphere exceeded 1,000 joules per kilogram. Storm relative helicity topped 200 meters squared per second. Surface humidity levels reached the mid-60s degrees Fahrenheit, numbers virtually unheard of in February. Record warmth pushed temperatures into the 70s and 80s across the South. A powerful low-pressure system combined with a 90 miles per hour jet stream created the perfect environment for violent, long-track tornadoes. The cap, a stable layer of air that normally suppresses storm formation, held longer than expected that afternoon, building tension in the atmosphere like a coiled spring. When it finally broke around 3:30 in the afternoon Central Time, the result was explosive. What made this outbreak meteorologically exceptional was the persistence of the supercells. Multiple thunderstorms maintained rotation for 7 to 8 hours, producing tornadoes along paths exceeding 50 and even 100 miles. One prolific supercell alone spawned 16 tornadoes from north-central Mississippi to southern Kentucky. The fast-moving storms traveled at 55 miles per hour, challenging even experienced forecasters. 5. Tornado emergency declarations were issued that day, the highest number at the time, representing the most dire warning level available. Average tornado warning lead time exceeded 17 minutes, significantly better than the 2008 goal of 11 minutes. Every single fatality occurred within a tornado watch boundary, and all were preceded by warnings. Yet despite this forecasting triumph, 57 people would die. The disconnect between excellent warnings and high casualties would become a critical lesson. At 5:19 in the afternoon Central Time, an EF4 tornado touched down 2 miles southeast of Neely in Yell County, Arkansas. What happened next defied belief. The tornado stayed on the ground for 127 minutes, carving a continuous 122-mile path through 7 counties, the longest tornado track in Arkansas history since 1950. With maximum winds reaching 158 miles per hour, the tornado widened to over half a mile and left devastation incomprehensible in scale. In Atkins, the first 3 fatalities occurred. In the Lucky Landing mobile home park, a woman was thrown from her home and killed. On the east side of town, Jimmy Cherry Jr., 40 years old, along with his family, Emmy and Dana Cherry, perished when their house was destroyed. In the Happy Bend community, a man sought shelter in a large metal shipping container designed to withstand ocean transport. The tornado hurled the container hundreds of yards into the woods. He was found dead inside. The tornado's path became a catalog of destruction. In Van Buren County near Clinton, 41 houses and 21 mobile homes were destroyed. A boat factory was demolished, killing 1 worker. Well-constructed homes were swept completely from their foundations, the signature damage indicator of EF4 intensity. In Stone County's Mountain View, the hospital suffered heavy damage. At a car dealership, vehicles were tossed from the sales lot across the highway. 1 car was lofted over a building and dropped into a ravine. A utility pole was pulled from the ground and jammed back in with wires still attached, a testament to the violence of the winds. The tornado finally dissipated 3.2 miles northeast of Highland in Sharp County, after destroying or damaging 880 homes and 100 businesses. In one documented photograph, a license plate is visible driven completely through a tree trunk. 13 people died along the 122-mile path. 140 were injured. At approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, An EF2 tornado crossed from South Haven, Mississippi into southeast Memphis, Tennessee. The funnel was broadcast live on local television, power flashes illuminating its rotation. At Memphis International Airport, a hangar roof was removed, and a Boeing 737 aircraft shifted 1 foot. But the deadliest moment came at the DSC Logistics Warehouse, where a building wall collapsed. Marley Pesky, Gregory Martin, and Leon Harbin, 3 forklift workers, were killed instantly. Regina Martin, Gregory's wife, later described the scene. The wall collapsed. Greg was found under a vending machine and under a lot of debris. Cheryl Wood, Marley Pesky's sister, reflected that life is so short and do not take it for granted. We did not know each other until that night. That is when we became close. The families of the 3 victims, strangers before February 5th, formed an unexpected bond, forged in tragedy. The tornado continued into the Hickory Ridge Mall, where a large wall and much of the roof collapsed at the Sears store. 6 people were injured. Damage surveyors specifically noted poor construction at the mall. In the adjacent Hickory Hill neighborhood, multiple homes were destroyed and bulldozed as total losses. Some residents went over a week without power. The tornado caused $128.4 million in damage. At 7:02 in the evening, 18-year-old freshman Matt Carter stood in a parking lot at Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. He recalled that he was in the parking lot on the other side of Jennings Hall when the tornado lifted him off the ground. He ran to the Adams dorm and held on to the first door he saw. Once the glass shattered in the window, he jumped into the room to take cover. An EF4 tornado with winds between 207 and 264 miles per hour was bearing down on the campus. EF sophomore Luke Burleson had been storm chasing outside, watching conditions deteriorate. The night had an ominous feel, dramatically changing from the sound of a passing freight train to an eerie stillness. With the quiet, the sky turned a shade of orange, and the pressure drastically dropped, the feeling one gets diving to the bottom of a deep swimming pool. Suddenly, the noise of bursting and shattering glass filled their ears, and they were thrown against the wall. Ominous sophomore Katie Pope was in a room with 15 students. There were 6 people in the bathroom already, and 6 of them were sitting in a bedroom, looking out the window, keeping an eye on the storm. They jumped up and ran toward the bathroom, but they did not make it there in time. As the storm hit, one friend was thrown in the direction of the couch and was knocked out. They were all crying and screaming, not sure how they were going to get out. 15, the tornado destroyed 80% of the dormitory buildings. 2 large brick, 2-story dormitory buildings completely collapsed with students inside. 13 students were trapped beneath tons of rubble. Over 1,100 vehicles on campus were damaged or destroyed, many wrapped around trees and rendered unrecognizable. Destroyed. Then came the agonizing rescue. Danny Song, a resident assistant in the Waters complex, was thrown to the ground when the tornado struck. A couch was blown across the room and wedged next to him, propping up a concrete wall that otherwise would have crushed him. He was trapped for 2 hours. Rescue fireman Matt Gay worked to free him, eventually facing an impossible decision. A bundle of 2x4 boards pinned Song's back, but cutting them might collapse the concrete slab above. Gay made the gamble. He cut the boards and the slab held. Gay later said that he had won on that gamble, but that he would not want to make that gamble many times. Song reflected years later that God is not good because he saved him. God saved him because he is good. His young daughter later asked, "Who moved the couch?" His answer was that God moved the couch. Gamble. Jason Casper was the last student pulled from the debris after 5 hours. Kevin Bradley and 6 other men were trapped in restrooms. Bradley recalled hearing firefighters' voices. That was like the first sound of hope they had really gotten that night. Hope Captain Robert Lehman of the Jackson Fire Department arrived expecting the worst. He said his mind was not prepared for that at all. He literally thought that they were probably looking at hundreds of body recoveries. His colleague, Captain Johnny Brantley, a 25-year veteran, called it the worst he had seen in his career. At one point during the rescue, Brantley received a call warning of another severe storm approaching in 5 minutes. He faced an impossible choice: evacuate his firefighters to safety or continue the rescue. He said you have got to protect who is working to save what you're working on, but he could not stop. Worst, all 13 trapped students were rescued alive. 51 students were hospitalized, 9 with serious injuries. The campus sustained $40 million in damage, yet remarkably, 0 students died. 0. Just after 10 o'clock at night, an EF3 tornado touched down near Castellian Springs in Sumner County, Tennessee. It would carve a 51-mile path through 3 counties, reaching 880 yards wide in places, and killed 22 people, the deadliest single tornado of the outbreak. In Castellian Springs, 85 homes were destroyed. Block foundation homes were swept away. The 180-year-old Wynwood Inn, Tennessee's longest log structure at 142 feet, and a national historical landmark dating to 1828, lost its top floor. The post office was completely leveled. In a muddy field littered with debris, rescuer David Harmon made a discovery. We grabbed hold of his neck to take a pulse, and he took a breath of air and started crying. It was Kyson Stoll, 11 months old, found 500 feet from where his home once stood. His mother, Carrie Beth Stoll, 23 years old, was found dead in the same field, about 50 yards from the house. The community called Kyson the Miracle Baby. A trust fund was established. The baby survived. His mother did not. The tornado continued into Trousdale County, striking the Columbia Gulf Transmission Company gas compressor station near Hartsville. The facility was ripped apart, triggering a massive natural gas leak and fire. Flames reached 400 to 500 feet into the air, visible for miles. Sheriff Mark Gammons of neighboring Macon County recalled that people were reporting fires all over the county, actually seeing the Columbia Gulf gas compressor station in Hartsville in flames. 2 elderly residents died in Trousdale County, but the worst devastation was yet to come. The tornado entered Macon County from the southwest, expanding to wider than 3/4 of a mile as it bore down on Lafayette. In the Williams community, northwest of town, 13 people died directly from the tornado, with 1 additional death from carbon monoxide poisoning from a generator afterward. James Kruger of Lafayette was watching election results on television when the warning appeared. Then the lights went out. He put on sweatpants, grabbed a flashlight, and drank a shot of whiskey. Then he heard a noise. He headed for a door, and all of a sudden, he heard glass breaking and felt it sucking. When he tried to shut the door, it seemed like the door was lifting up. So he dove and lay flat on the floor. The house was blown away above him. Sheriff Gammons received a phone call he will never forget. He remembered picking up a phone call that night saying their family was gone. Their house was gone. At that point, he left and went to the golf course area, the neighborhood out there. He remembered it was just like a war zone. People screaming, power lines down, houses gone that you knew were there, but now they were gone. 170 homes were destroyed in Lafayette. Multiple churches were leveled to the ground. Debris from Lafayette was later found 70 miles away in Sano, Kentucky. Damage in Macon County alone totaled $78 million. Tennessee Governor Phil Bredesen surveyed the destruction by helicopter and told reporters that it looks like the Lord took a Brillo pad and scrubbed the ground. The tornado continued into Kentucky, maintaining EF3 strength. Remarkably, 13 residents who took shelter in a basement when their home was destroyed above them all survived, trapped for half an hour before digging themselves out. The tornado finally dissipated in Cumberland County after a 51-mile rampage. Casualties were 22 dead and 63 injured. Between 1 o'clock and 5:30 in the morning on February 6th, as most people slept, 2 EF4 tornadoes struck northern Alabama. At 3:02 in the morning, an EF4 touched down south of Moulton in Lawrence County. A large brick two-story home was completely leveled to the ground. A truck was thrown more than 100 yards into a field. Fence posts anchored in concrete were ripped out and thrown up to 100 feet. 4 people died, including 3 members of a single family north of Aldridge Grove. An elderly woman was killed in a mobile home. 23 others were injured. When the final tallies were complete, the Super Tuesday outbreak had produced 87 confirmed tornadoes across 9 states. 57 people died, 32 in Tennessee, 13 to 14 in Arkansas, 7 in Kentucky, and 4 to 5 in Alabama. 358 people required hospitalization for their injuries. There were 5 EF4 violent tornadoes and 5 EF3 tornadoes. Total damage reached $1.2 billion, with over $500 million from tornadoes alone. This was the deadliest U.S. tornado outbreak since May 31st, 1985, which killed 76 people. It was the deadliest in the modern NEXRAD radar era, and the second deadliest February outbreak since 1950. But these numbers mask a crucial reality. 63% of fatalities occurred in mobile homes, despite them constituting only 7.6% of U.S. housing. The fatality rate for mobile homes is 10 times higher than conventional structures, and 81% of victims had no access to a basement, storm cellar, or safe room. The outbreak killed the most vulnerable, those with the least protection. The long-term consequences revealed failures beyond meteorology. Of all the outbreak's impacts, few were as lasting and unexpected as what happened to Memphis's Hickory Hill neighborhood. An EF2 tornado caused $128.4 million in immediate damage. But the true toll was measured in decades, not days. Hickory Ridge Mall was already struggling before the tornado, 50% vacant, facing demographic shifts and economic decline. The tornado collapsed the Sears wall, damaged Macy's, and flooded the center court. Sears reopened 5 days later. No other stores ever reopened. Store owners used the tornado damage as an out in their leases to bolt, according to city officials. The property sold for $1.4 million in October 2008, just 10% of its 2003 purchase price. Former Memphis City Council member Harold Collins reflected in 2018, 10 years after the tornado. He said, "It's probably an untold amount of money that has been lost or forfeited because of the storm." He noted that damaged areas of Hickory Hill didn't bounce back then and haven't since. By 2018, some residents still reference time based off the tornado, a full decade later. Hickory Hill became a case study in how a tornado can accelerate and permanently entrench economic decline. The community never recovered. Research on tornado survivors reveals a disturbing pattern. While immediate depression often subsides, post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD symptoms actually increase 5 to 7 years after a disaster. Studies show post-disaster PTSD can remain substantial, even 30 years after events, especially in high-fatality disasters. Approximately 20 to 22% of tornado survivors develop PTSD symptoms. A critical finding from disaster mental health research is that many survivors don't realize they need help until years later, when busy lives slow down. Mental health professionals reported treating patients who only sought help 5 to 7 years after the 2008 tornadoes. The 2008 outbreak likely followed this pattern. Union University students trapped under rubble, families who lost loved ones, and first responders who searched through the destruction all faced increased PTSD risk that emerged years later. Despite the severity of the outbreak, Tennessee did not significantly strengthen building codes in response. Before 2008, Tennessee required buildings to withstand only winds of 90 miles per hour. Most damaged areas rebuilt to the same 90 miles per hour standard that had failed. Between 2008 and 2010, no significant building code changes were implemented statewide. Expert assessments. After 2020 Tennessee tornadoes still found glaring deficiencies in load path to foundation, the same construction failures observed in 2008. One of the outbreak's most troubling hidden facts is that Macon County had tornado warning sirens, but they were not working at the time of the tornado. Despite excellent National Weather Service warnings and media coverage, many residents were unprepared because of this infrastructure failure. This catastrophic system breakdown directly contributed to the 13 to 24 deaths in the area. Union University stands as the outbreak's most remarkable recovery story. On the night of February 5th, 1,000 displaced students needed shelter. Jackson area churches and community members came to campus and picked up students, opening their homes to strangers. By morning, every student was housed. The university made an audacious commitment to rebuild 14 new residence buildings by the fall semester, just 6 months away. Over 5,000 volunteers from around the world assisted. Over 8,000 donors contributed. Southern Baptist Convention entities pledged over $3 million. All 14 buildings were completed by fall 2008, ahead of schedule. Classes resumed February 18th, just 13 days after the tornado. University enrollment increased 14% for fall 2008, despite the devastation. The tornado transformed the institution, creating lasting community bonds and becoming a source of institutional pride. February 5th, 2008 was Super Tuesday. 24 U.S. states holding presidential primary elections. Among affected states were Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, Alabama, and Tennessee. As Americans voted for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, and Mike Huckabee, tornadoes struck polling locations. Multiple voting locations closed early due to approaching severe weather. Some polling stations in Tennessee and Arkansas were disrupted, with voters forced to take cover. In a bizarre coincidence, the town of Clinton, Arkansas, was hit by a tornado on the day Arkansas voters went to the polls. President George W. Bush declared federal disasters on February 7th for 11 Arkansas counties and 5 Tennessee counties. On February 8th, Bush toured the devastated areas in Macon County. Standing amid the destruction, Bush told residents that there was no doubt in his mind this community will come back better than before. He said Macon County people are down-to-earth, hard-working, God-fearing people. A monument stands on the Lafayette Town Square, memorializing all 24 Macon County victims. All victims' names are etched in stone. The community holds annual remembrance services. Tragedy became part of community identity. The February 5th through 6th, 2008, Super Tuesday tornado outbreak demonstrated both the power of modern meteorology and its limits. The Storm Prediction Center forecast was exceptional, accurate 6 days in advance. High-risk outlooks, particularly dangerous situation watches, tornado emergencies, and 17-minute average warning lead times represented the pinnacle of forecasting capability. Yet, 57 people died. The disconnect illuminates a harsh truth. You cannot warn someone to safety if no safe place exists. 2/3 of victims were in mobile homes. Most had no access to adequate shelter. Lower-income rural populations faced the highest risk but had the fewest resources. The outbreak killed efficiently at night, when tornadoes are invisible and residents are most vulnerable. It killed in winter, when psychological preparedness was lowest. It killed the economically vulnerable, those living in mobile homes, those without insurance, and those in communities lacking resources for rapid recovery. But the outbreak also revealed extraordinary resilience. Union University's rebuild, 14 buildings in 6 months, showed what is possible with resources and commitment. The Jackson community opening homes to 1,000 displaced students overnight demonstrated compassionate solidarity. Firefighters gambling their lives to free trapped students, refusing to evacuate despite incoming storms, showed the best of human courage. Baby Kyson's survival, found 500 feet from his destroyed home, somehow alive, became a symbol of improbable hope. The 2008 outbreak now sits in the shadow of the even deadlier April 2011 super outbreak, which killed 324 people. Yet its lessons remain urgent. The communities that never recovered, the survivors battling post-traumatic stress disorder, the policy failures, the infrastructure gaps all persist. We know how to forecast tornadoes with remarkable accuracy. We know mobile homes are death traps. We know building codes matter. We know warning sirens must work. We know mental health support must extend beyond the immediate aftermath. We know, and yet communities remain vulnerable. Until that changes, the hidden consequences of the Super Tuesday outbreak, the wounds that never healed, stand as warning of what awaits the next community in a tornado's path.